The Satanic Verses. The Satanic Verses got Salman Rushdie a death sentence from Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini in 1989, making him one of the most famous targets of religious censorship ever. Mein Kampf. Hitler wrote this while imprisoned after a failed coup in 1923. The book laid out his anti-Semitic beliefs and expansionist plans that would later become Nazi policy. Lolita. Vladimir Nabokov's 1955 novel follows a middle-aged man's disturbing fixation on a young girl, leading to bans in multiple countries despite critics praising its literary craftsmanship. American Psycho. American Psycho follows Patrick Bateman, a wealthy investment banker in 1980s Manhattan who tortures and murders people in increasingly graphic ways while obsessing over designer brands and business cards. The Anarchist Cookbook. The Anarchist Cookbook hit shelves in 1971 when 19-year-old William Powell compiled instructions for homemade explosives, drug synthesis, and improvised weapons, creating a manual that's been banned in several countries and blamed for numerous deaths. Brave New World. Huxley's future society runs on engineered happiness. Babies grown in bottles, everyone dosed with soma to stay content, and sex treated as casual recreation. Governments banned it for promoting promiscuity and questioning authority. 1984. Orwell's 1984 depicts a totalitarian state with constant surveillance and thought control. The irony is thick. Authoritarian regimes like the USSR and China banned it precisely because it exposes the tactics they themselves used. The Catcher in the Rye. Salinger's 1951 novel follows Holden Caulfield, a cynical teenager wandering New York after getting expelled. Schools banned it for decades because of the swearing, sexual references, and Holden's contempt for basically every adult around him. Ulysses. James Joyce's Ulysses got banned in both the US and UK right after it came out in 1922 because of its explicit sexual content and profanity, but a 1933 court case lifted the American ban and changed obscenity law. The Communist Manifesto. Marx and Engels laid out their vision of class struggle and revolution in 1848. Fascist governments, Red Scare America, and anti-communist regimes banned it, fearing workers might actually organize and demand their share of the wealth. Lady Chatterley's Lover. Lady Chatterley's Lover follows an upper-class woman who has an affair with her husband's gamekeeper. The book was banned for decades because of its explicit sex scenes and frequent use of four-letter words. The Color Purple. Alice Walker's 1982 novel follows Celie, a poor black woman in Georgia surviving abuse and finding her voice through letters to God and her sister, told in raw dialect that made many schools uncomfortable with its frank treatment of rape and lesbian relationships. Slaughterhouse-Five. Vonnegut's Dresden bombing novel got banned for its rough language and sex scenes, but the real problem was how it made war look pointless and absurd instead of heroic. The Diary of Anne Frank. Anne Frank's diary described 2 years hiding in an Amsterdam attic during World War II before her family was discovered and sent to concentration camps where she died at 15. To Kill a Mockingbird. Harper Lee's novel about a lawyer defending a black man in 1930s Alabama gets challenged for its racial slurs, even though the whole point is showing how wrong racism is. Harry Potter series. This 7-book series about a boy wizard attending magic school got banned in religious communities for supposedly promoting witchcraft and the occult, even though millions of kids just saw it as a fantasy adventure story. Animal Farm. Orwell's 1945 fable follows farm animals who overthrow their human owner, only to see the pigs become the new oppressors. Communist states banned it immediately because the parallels to Stalin's Soviet Union were impossible to miss. Fahrenheit 451. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 depicts a future where firemen burn books instead of putting out fires. The novel itself has been banned in some places for profanity and for criticizing censorship, which is literally its entire point. The Kite Runner. Khaled Hosseini's novel follows 2 boys in Kabul before the Taliban takeover. Afghanistan banned it outright, while other countries challenged it for depicting a childhood rape and the country's ethnic divisions. Of Mice and Men. Steinbeck's Depression-era story follows two drifters chasing the American dream on California ranches. The book gets challenged constantly for its racial language, brutal violence, and that ending where George shoots Lenny to spare him a worse death. The Adventures of Huck Finn. Mark Twain's 1884 novel follows young Huck and the escaped slave Jim rafting down the Mississippi. It's been banned for decades over racial slurs, even though the book criticizes the racism of its time. The Handmaid's Tale. Margaret Atwood's 1985 novel imagines a near-future America where religious extremists have taken over and fertile women are forced into sexual slavery. It gets challenged constantly for profanity, explicit scenes, and its unflattering portrayal of fundamentalist Christianity. A Clockwork Orange. Anthony Burgess wrote A Clockwork Orange in 1962 about a violent teen named Alex who speaks in a made-up slang called NADSAT and gets brainwashed by the government to stop his crimes. The Absolutely True Diary. Sherman Alexie's semi-autobiographical novel follows a Spokane Indian teenager leaving his reservation school. It became America's most challenged book for years running because of its frank language, sexual content, and depictions of alcohol abuse. Are You There, God? It's me. Judy Blume's 1970 novel follows sixth grader Margaret as she navigates puberty, from waiting for her first period to comparing breast development with friends, all while questioning which religion to follow. The Bluest Eye. The Bluest Eye follows Pecola Breedlove, a young black girl in 1940s Ohio who believes having blue eyes would make her beautiful and loved, leading to her tragic psychological breakdown after enduring abuse and racism. Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants follows two fourth graders who hypnotize their mean principal into thinking he's a superhero who fights crime in his underwear. Schools banned it constantly for toilet jokes and making authority figures look ridiculous. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Stephen Chbosky published this epistolary novel in 1999. It follows Charlie, a high school freshman, writing letters about his experiences with friendship, sexuality, trauma, and mental health through his first year. Genderqueer. Genderqueer is Maya Kobabe's illustrated memoir about figuring out air gender identity and sexuality using e/am/air pronouns throughout. It became America's most banned book in recent years because of its LGBTQ content and explicit drawings. Looking for Alaska follows Miles at boarding school where he befriends Alaska, a complicated girl he falls for. The book gets challenged constantly because the teens drink, smoke, and there's an explicit sexual scene that parents really don't want their kids reading. The Holy Bible. The Bible has been banned in communist countries like the Soviet Union and China, and it's been challenged in some Western schools for its graphic violence, incest stories, and sexual content that parents argue isn't appropriate for kids. The Hate You Give. The Hate You Give tells the story of Star Carter, a black teenager who watches a cop shoot her unarmed friend Khalil during a traffic stop, then has to decide whether to speak out publicly about what she saw. All Quiet on the Western Front. Remarque's novel followed German soldiers in the trenches and showed war as brutal, pointless, and dehumanizing rather than heroic. The Nazis burned it for being unpatriotic, while others banned it for graphic violence. In the Night Kitchen. In the Night Kitchen came out in 1970 and almost immediately got banned from libraries because the main character, a little boy named Mickey, spends the whole story running around naked, which made a lot of parents very uncomfortable. The Giving Tree. The Giving Tree gets challenged for supposedly teaching kids bad lessons about sacrifice, that the tree gives everything away and gets nothing back, which some parents think models unhealthy relationships or makes children too sad. Where's Waldo? Where's Waldo was challenged in some places after someone spotted a tiny topless woman on a beach in one illustration. The publisher eventually edited her out in later printings.